Okay, so this is week 3, context, quote of the day. Intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. I think Stephen Hawking in his life with dealing with ALS, which is one of the diagnoses we're going to be kind of tackling this week, definitely epitomized that. I'm going to go back to last week. Make sure you know these kinds of things. I won't get into this recording, but what are the essential functions? What is a reasonable accommodation, undue hardship? One of those ADA laws. Make sure you know that, very important. Accommodations for a disabled employee do not cause undue financial hardship, really, to particular businesses due to cost, composition, structure, functions of the workforce, impact of accommodation on employers' ability to conduct business. That's what they mean by that undue hardship, reasonable, unreasonable accommodations. What has the ADA accomplished? Really hasn't accomplished its goal of everybody getting disabled back into work and reducing the unemployment rate and all those kinds of discrepancies between the employed and between the able-bodied and the disabled body really still exist as they did back in the 1990s. What is the curb cut effect? It has like that multiplier effect. So it was good for people in wheelchairs, but it was good for other people as well. Strollers, rolling, suitcases, joggers, bikers, all that sort of stuff. It had that multiplier effect. Good example how accommodating for somebody with a disability isn't just for them, it's really for everyone. What is an example of fun? Enclothed cognition, getting your sense of emotion or self-esteem, identification with your clothes. Medical redesign, taking something like a wheelchair that's very medical, stigmatizing and redesigning it. As you look at these images of these cool wheelchairs. Limitations of current work programs for the disabled. The big limitations, they don't seem to really be designed to get people back to work. It's more like an all or nothing kind of very limited safety net kind of thing. So we give the example of the college student that couldn't take the summer job because if she did, she would lose her PCAs to help her get bathed and dressed and all that. So she couldn't take that job that would advance her career towards getting a good career, making good money, that sort of thing. Limiting in that sense. These are the movements we're doing this week in class. So lecture questions. Universal design. What is universal design? Design of products, environments, so they can be used by everybody. Universally used. I think you're familiar with this term. You think of this sink here, definitely neurotypical. I could walk up to that sink and use it, as could somebody in a wheelchair. Same with this toilet. It has a lot of access in terms of area. This faucet, somebody can just tap it versus having to use the control kind of thing. This is a great example of universal design in stairs. It's stairs and it's a ramp. And it's a graded ramp. It's not like a steep ramp. You can see if you're on a wheelchair, you can just go side to side using the steps. The steps really aren't overly difficult if you have endurance kinds of issues, just little steps at a time. And there's a railing there. You need to hang on to the steps. So it has universal qualities to it. These are the 7 principles of universal design, and if this is definitely something that's going to come back in the midterm, this is a question I'd like to go to because there's a lot to it. It's an important thing to know as an OT. There's usually board exam kind of stuff around this concept. It's really basic core concept for OTs of universal design. These are the 7 principles of universal design. It's something that's equitable in use. It's fair and impartial for everybody. Has a tolerance for error. It's not like you can just use it one way, and if you can't use it that way, you're kind of out of luck. A lot of technologies like that. You just can use it just that one way, and if you can't use it that way, you can't do it. It's flexible. It kind of goes to tolerance for error. You can do it a lot of different ways. Think of the curb cut or that stairway. Low physical effort. Simple and intuitive. This is a huge one. It's not hard to use. We're going to give the example second of the AED for Heart attacks, that's really simple and intuitive to use. Perceptible information meets diverse sensory needs, maybe braille, voice versus just reading, different languages, whatever. Size and space for approach and use. It's accessible, enough room to move your wheelchair, whatever it is you need to kind of do what it is that you need to do. Equitable in use. We've got some examples. Design is useful and marketable to people with diverse abilities. Can a person in their wheelchair use that shopping cart? Probably not, but if there's carts with baskets in them, or scooters with baskets in them, which some stores have, they would be potentially more equitable. 2, flexibility in use. These are different kinds of scissors. These are the compression scissors, or a form of looped scissors. It's a good thing to be familiar with as an OT, because you'll be wanting to use different kinds of scissors. In the schools with kiddos, traditional scissors, which are quite kind of challenging to use. These are just like, you just squeeze kind of thing. It's more flexible. Lower or more flexible use. I'm sure why it's doing that. So, low physical effort. So it takes a little effort to do that doorknob versus turning it. Simple and intuitive. The AED is a great thing. A lot of different ways. It colors and voices and do this, do that. Perceptible information. Braille is a good example. Size and space. So these are like subway terminals. There's enough room there for the wheelchair to go through. You need to know all 7 of those. Universal design in the classroom. This is something, when we get into the laws around assistive tech, that every child should have that equitable, fair access to education. And this is kind of a big part of it. What does that include? Voice recognition software, potentially sign language. These personal frequency modulated transmission devices. These are really cool. So if somebody is hard of hearing, she doesn't need a speaker to talk loud. He just needs this little thing on his ear, and he can hear what she's saying. Wheelchair access. Then we did that human movement way back. You can see the wheelchair access in the bathrooms is not so great here. It doesn't fit all 7 of those principles. Space, size and space for approach and use. It falls down. House and bathrooms is a good one. The faucets themselves, the sink themselves, they're all kind of missing on a lot of these kinds of things. It doesn't fit purely the categories or the qualities of universal design. Braille is another great example. There's other examples of universal design. We're talking more about universal design for learning, not just kind of accessing, but everybody kind of learns differently. You may have, we'll call it a learning disability, but it's really you just kind of have certain strengths in certain areas and other things you may struggle a little bit with. If you teach through multiple different ways, it's more universal in design. This classes I teach try to make it more universal in design. We're teaching you through multiple ways. What do I mean by that? You're watching documentaries, TED Talks. You're reading stories. You're making adaptive equipment. You're doing simulations that involve a lot of different levels. You're kind of like learning through doing kind of things, learning through listening kind of things, learning through listening to each other. Different kinds of ways, multiple ways. It's kind of the brain how it learns best. And kind of fits this idea of universal design for learning. Okay, so now we're getting into the assistive tech. The assistive technology is a big part of this class. I mentioned it the first day. Kind of moving forward, we're going to spend a lot of time on assistive technology. Simple technology for the most part, and some advanced. We'll talk about the kind of tech that you're going to be using when you're out there working in the schools and rehab kind of facilities. Kind of learning about that and getting, you already know a lot about it, but kind of getting so it's almost like secondary in your mind. You can just kind of like bang, bang, bang. You need this, you need that. You can know the stuff in your head, different options for your clients. Defining assistive tech, the application of a practical industrial arts, some kind of technology, helps people with a medical disability perform desired activities. So, could be low tech or high tech. Just FYI, in general, low tech is better than high tech. High tech is cool. It's great. It does all these amazing things. But it's usually very expensive. Insurance doesn't pay for it. And people don't generally use it if it's hard to use. If it's not flexible in use, as we said. Advanced device, adaptations, instruction service, all kinds of different uses. This is just really some of them. Communication, mobility, computers, toys, adaptive toys, EDLs, instructional aids, all these different kinds of assistive tech devices. Just looking at some of this stuff really applies to the school setting and other settings. Computer use, this is a huge thing you'll deal with. I don't know if you've met Carrie Luce, she works in the Bengals school system. She does assistive tech for them, that's her thing. So she knows all the different technology that is available for students. She does a lot with apps and stuff. You have to be kind of an app expert working with kids. Just computer access, different kinds of ways. Joysticks, trackballs, interfaces and switches, kind of adapting the technology so it can meet diverse needs. Eye gaze systems, speaking systems, you're for all that, touch, mouth sticks, some with head movements, even blinking, different kinds of keyboards to make it accessible, easier, less fatiguing, lighter touch, increased spacing, ones that you have a hard time hitting it so it doesn't repeat, color, different kinds of cueing, word prediction software, even moisture guards if drilling is an issue. Some examples of the different kinds of joysticks. Here's the eye track, eye gaze, kind of tracking, the mouth guard, all kinds of cool stuff. Skin put, it's literally on your skin, you just touch it. Arm movements, this one here, just moving their arm, moving it. I'll talk more about this later. There's more new mind control stuff. Think a thought, and it works the computer. It's a cool adaptation for mouse, keyboard kind of thing. Resources, these are just some of the endless resources around assistive tech. Again, this is going to be your thing if you're in schools for your career. Don't forget the Iris Network. I hope you guys are familiar with that. That's the main division for the blind. It's free for your clients. You want to tap into that if they have a low vision, especially if it's a newer low vision thing. They have lots of resources, lots of training, great people. I did level 1 with them. Good thing to think about. They're easy to access. I think you just Google Iris Network, main division for the blind. It'll pop right up. And they're all over the state. Here's some examples of tech devices. This is a common one that a lot of OTs use, the mobile arm device. Remember mobile arm devices. That will, again, potentially come back midterm exam questions. Different examples of these. He's trying to get the food to his mouth. He's got a universal cuff there. Tell him to hold the spoon. See this little metal thing around his arm? It helps assists his arm, basically, in the movement he needs, in this case, coming to his mouth. Kind of shoulder, elbow flexion kind of thing. This is an exoskeleton. This is made with a 3D printer. 3D printers, as you've got a good exposure with Kim through that sort of stuff. Amazing resource for assistive tech. A lot of schools are getting these 3D printers now. Really a great thing to get into if you're ever an OT. This is a mobile arm device. She wants to play. Play is the work, the stimulation of kiddos, as you know. It's a huge deal to get them playing with the braces and the exoskeleton of the mobile arm device. She can kind of reach out and do stuff with her teapot there. This is a client painting with a mobile arm device. I had a woman with multiple sclerosis. She used one of these ones to paint. She loved it. This guy is using it to help support his arms as he's typing. It's just kind of an arm support kind of thing. And then the ultimate example of high tech, that's kind of why I use the Stephen Hawking example, is Stephen Hawking. Let me just talk about him a little bit first. He passed away just a few years ago. ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Good diagnosis to be aware of. You'll see that. There's a lot of that out there, actually. I saw quite a It's a horrible disease, as you probably know. It affects all the nerves of their body. Usually the brain is intact, so they can think clearly, but it gets to the point where they can't move their legs, can't move their arms, can't talk, can't swallow, can't control their bowels. He lived with it, which is quite phenomenal, for over 50 years. He had the resources, which is a big part of extending your life with ALS, if you choose. A lot of ALS clients don't choose to live with all the restrictions. But he did, and he had a lot of meaning in his life. Juncture, really, I think he's a good example of juncture theory. He communicated with twitching of his cheek, centers of his glasses, type, he could talk through word prediction survey software. So he gave lectures, talked at conferences, wrote amazing books, did a lot of intense intellectual physics kind of thinking. He was a physicist. 24-hour care. There was definitely parts of his life where he would be in disjuncture. It was a struggle. The feeding, he wanted to avoid a feeding tube. They used to push the food down his throat. A lot of things kind of unpleasant, but he got a lot of meaning out of life, a lot of juncture out of life. Even with his disability, because of all this tech, this high-tech stuff. Some of the examples, he pretty much controlled everything from his chair, with his sensors, using his glasses, speech synthesizer, the tablet, these universal remote things, control TV, music, lights, all this stuff in his house. They were trying to work towards thought control stuff with him, early stages of that. Wasn't that successful for them. It's kind of newer tech. Powered his wheelchair, just did everything you can imagine. It's almost like if you have the money, there's almost endless possibilities what you can do with technology. Think about him, these models of disability. He's a really great example of that. You can apply all the different models to him. Again, this is stuff that's going to come back on your exam. Moral model of disability, blaming the person. It's hard to blame Stephen Hawking for the ALS. You'd have to go back to the Middle Ages and they would blame maybe Stephen Hawking's family or ancestors did something awful and this is how they're paying for it. Who knows? Medical model of disability, he is disabled because he has ALS. Social model of disability, the only thing is disabling him is the lack of high tech that he has to a large degree. Juncture theory, we talked about that. He has moments of juncture and disjuncture within his day. Juncture when he's lecturing, that's the meaning, that connection. Disjuncture when he's maybe trying to eat or to swallow. So it goes through the different theories. This is kind of a model of assistive technology on how to find what we're calling a good fit, a good match. And this can be really, really challenging. It seems when you learn about this stuff in school and stuff, oh, this stuff is cool. This person has this disability. I can just give them this, and they'll be able to do what they want to be able to do. Not so easy, especially when you get into the higher tech. It really has to be a good fit. And you really have to figure this out. If you're like on a part of a team, IDE team meeting, I think it's IDE team meeting in the school setting, where all the disciplines are together, the social worker, the speech therapist, the physical therapist, you, the teacher, and sometimes the student or the parent. Is it a good fit? Can you really make this expenditure in the school budget to buy this piece of high tech? Is it really going to work? You have to think about all these things, all these variables, and the client and the device variables. Obviously, what are the client goals? What can and can't do? What is their attitudes and acceptance of the device? A lot of this goes back to that medical design stuff we saw last week, making something look cool and acceptable, especially if you're a kid. You don't want something that looks real stigmatizing. Remember that helmet kind of thing? Make you stick out as a different kind of, you want to be different. Especially when you're young, you don't want to be different at all. Never easy to be different. But are you going to accept it? This is the best we can do with the design of it. You can try to get rid of the stigma on it, but this is the best we can do. Are you going to not accept it? Kind of figure that out. Definitely the cost, how much can they pay, afford, they have to afford it, the insurance isn't covering it. Maintenance, this is huge. Do you have to go back and get regular maintenance? Are you able to do that? Is it easy to use? Is it simple or not? Does it fit within your context and environment? Does it fit within the school environment? Can you take it home and use it? The design, do you like the design? Is it cool? Is it appealing? Is there training that's going to require? You have to keep updating the software. How complicated is it? A lot of these things can throw the person right off and they'll just never use it. You may think it's a good fit, but in reality it may not be a good fit. And this is what you have to kind of drill down to kind of do that. Some examples of good fit, bad fit. Walkers, a lot of men don't like walkers. They end up kind of walking around and holding onto it, or more commonly they just leave it behind. Don't use it. We talked about the redesigning for those canes, those veteran canes that commemorate their contribution in Korea, World War II, or Vietnam. Old guys love the canes. It says something about them. And they'll use the cane, whereas the walker may feel like it makes them look effeminate or something, so they will not use it. KISS principle, keep it simple. Keep it simple, stupid. The simpler, the better. Here's another good example of OT goals, or in this case, OT student goals versus the patient goals. When I was a student, just like you guys, I had an assignment where I had to make a design and fabricate an assistive tech, some kind of assistive technology thing. And I decided to do it off my level 1 student that I was doing. I was working with a division for the blind, and this woman was blind. She'd pretty much been totally blind for most of her life. And she was, her husband was always like her sighted guide, and then he left her, so she was alone. She had 2 kids. She needed to get around. And she lived in a small town. She needed to get access to the town, to get to the store, to get to the bank. She needed to know the town really well and use that white cane. She was learning how to use a white cane. Get through traffic, stoplights, that sort of thing. So I thought, okay, what really cool is I'll design this model of the town. So it was like a little model of all different towns. Here's the bank, here's the grocery store, here's the intersection, here's the traffic light. So she could feel it. The idea was for her to feel it and to orient herself to the town. I thought it was a cool idea. My professors thought it was a cool idea. I got a good grade. Students thought it was a cool idea. She did not. She was very grateful for the idea, and she said she did all the effort, but it didn't work for her. She didn't like it. It was too much, and she didn't really like the white cane either. Turns out she ended up just going back to sighted guide with friends. The white cane was just too scary for her, too late in life, I think. We talked about getting tech, especially big technology when you're younger versus older, when you're kind of set in your ways. It was just too scary for her. So it was a good fit. I thought it was a good fit, but in reality it was not a good fit. That kind of story is really, really common in OT. We're so enthusiastic. We want to give people all these devices and stuff. Will they really use it? Does it really fit their routine, their life, all these complicated things? That is a person that we're trying to get out, with all these stories and stuff, the perspective of everybody that can be so different. Okay, what we're going to do, I'd like you to do if you're doing this from home, is watch this TED Talk on this ballet dancer. She was lost her leg in that awful bombing during the Boston Marathon. Good happy ending with that. So check that out, and then do the exercise where you're comparing her to Johnny, the guy with the leg and the lost leg, the amputation in legs. So check that out. Good example of good fits and bad fit. What was a good fit for her was not a good fit for him. Why is that? Kind of looking at that kind of thing. Okay, shifting gears a little bit. I think I'm going to stop this right here and I'll make it 2 of them.